I am so grateful to have overcome devastating challenges over my lifetime. It's for this reason that I am passionate and obligated to share my faith, my hope, and my life. My faith is in God, my hope is in His promises, and my life is for this purpose. I am Yvonne Roundtree, and this is Everyday Matters.
As you listen to this testimony, I have two things that I would like you to pay close attention to. And one is that May was a whole person. She was fulfilled in life before she met the person that she married. And secondly, how she shares with us the confidence that she had in herself and the hope that she had in God. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. And what got me so was God, the Lord, let me know then, you're living off your mother's prayers, you're living off the saints' prayers. You got to have a personal relationship with me for yourself. And from there, I made that commitment through prayer and faith. Okay, after making that commitment, I made up my mind, I was going to live for God no matter what.
Okay.
Even going through school, you had, some of the kids would ridicule you. At that time, they call it sanctified.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have, like I say, kids ridicule, talk about your laugh.
Because
you're
you didn't do the
sanctified
same
because you didn't do
things.
the same things they did.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I would go home and, being young like that, you quote, cry and talk to the Lord and stuff, but I never broke in front of them at school.
Mm-hmm.
I would go back to school, just like nothing happened, like I'm living this life, I don't care what nobody says, I'm going to live for God. And from there, I took it a little further. I'm like, being committed now, since you've committed yourself, what about daring to be different?
Daring to be different.
Daring to be different.
Wow.
My mom always taught us, growing up as kids, we would always say, Mama, they're doing this, why we can't do this? They're doing it, why we can't do that? And she would always say, you know what, you're not them. That's why you're not doing what they're going to do.
Okay, dare to be different.
Yes. And from there, that was a positive influence to let me know, I have to be my own self. I can't be influenced by anybody else, regardless of what people say. I am responsible to do what I know to do is right. And I can't allow anybody else to come in and force me to do something that I know was wrong.
Especially that you don't feel comfortable with. Because a lot of young people now, they do things that they're not even comfortable with doing. Just to appease other people and to be a part of this crowd. Absolutely. And you were able to not allow yourself to feel that need.
Yes.
Was your family pretty close? You have other siblings?
I have 4 siblings, and all of us, grew up, and all of us are saved and love the Lord.
Okay. Wow.
And also another thing that I saw was, even in growing up, and living for God, is that you have to surround yourself with godly women of wisdom. A lot of times we can avoid certain things in life if we just listen. A lot of things I didn't have to go through with. Don't get me wrong. In general, in life, you're going to go through some things. Some things that can't be avoided, but there are some things in life that you can avoid if you just listen.
Yes. And it's important that you say surrounding yourself with people of wisdom and of like minds, because then you can encourage each other. You can be strength for each other, because you don't need people around you that are telling you to do the opposite things that you want to do. Because naturally, you're putting yourself in a position to become vulnerable to that. So that's really smart. And you had your sisters and brothers.
Well, actually, sisters.
Your sisters.
And my mom.
You have all sisters?
All sisters. I have 4 sisters.
And no brothers.
No brothers.
Oh, okay. So all of you and your sisters, you stuck together. You were the friends for each other, and you supported each other in this. And so I would imagine, being as lovely as you are and going through high school, you had guys that especially when they knew that you're different, that made you even more of an appeal to them, you know. So how did you all handle that?
You know what? Even through going through high school, I never dated. I never
Okay,
dated.
you didn't date.
My first date was at the age of 29, and that was by choice. Because by that time, I knew who I was, and could nobody make me think anything different.
So you spent most of your adult life getting to know yourself,
Yes.
getting to know who you were,
Yes.
and that's important as well. You know, that's something that we don't see happening with our young people because they get involved with other people intimately so fast, they never get to know who they are because they're influenced by the people that they connect with emotionally and physically. And so you got this knowledge to do this all from the relationship that you had with God and
Yes.
with your family.
Yes. Yes.
What influence did your father have over you and your sisters?
You know, my father wasn't saved.
He was not saved.
My father was not saved, but
Wow.
he and my mom were always together in raising us. If
Wow.
she said something, you couldn't go to him and ask for something different because he's going to say, what did she say?
Yes.
And vice versa. So they stuck together on their decisions.
Now that's very important that he had enough respect for her and her relationship with God, her values really, because I always say that whether a person believes in God or not is just a matter of values. So we're just going to speak simply values here. These were your mother's values, and your father accepted her values.
Yes.
And these values influenced you to the point where you grew up and was able to keep yourself until you married your husband
Yes.
at 40. And you know, as far as the whole family dynamics, that's a really profound thing, like I said, because your mother and father didn't necessarily have the same values, but the one thing that they had is respect. And that's what we have to have in marriage.
Yes.
That's what we have to have in marriage when we have children to raise, because if one parent has different values than the other and they don't come together to work together and respect each other's values or the right values, because I believe that just because your father was not a Christian man, he knew right from wrong.
Yes.
He did what was best for you all
Yes.
because he knew that if you all connected yourselves to the wrong things, that's going to bring grief on you.
Exactly.
And that's what he was trying to avoid. So that's just, I mean, he was just a man of wisdom.
Yes.
That was just wisdom.
And I was about to bring up respect too. Another thing, respect. Respect yourself and love who you are.
Love who you are
Love who you are. Be in love with yourself
first.
first.
Yes, before you
Get
can
to
love
know
someone.
yourself before you branch out with somebody else. My mom, she would always tell us, know what you could do for yourself and by yourself before you get connected with somebody else. And when that person comes along, they will just only enhance what you already have.
Wow. She was certainly a woman of enormous wisdom. And it's just a great thing that you did have the mind, you and your sisters had the mind to acknowledge your mother's wisdom, because a lot of young people nowadays, they don't acknowledge their own parents' wisdom for whatever reason or not. They lose respect. And I take ownership to that, because sometimes as parents and as adults, we do things to lose the respect of our youth. And then once we lose that respect, then we don't have their attention any longer. They feel that everything that you do is not to be acknowledged. And so we really have to pray that we model the right behavior in front of our young people so that we can gain their respect. Even in ourselves, that we learn to discipline ourselves in a way that we can model that behavior, because first we have to have it to model it. So that's my prayer. And I really thank you for sharing with us. What would you say to parents in addition to what your parents gave you that we can give to our youth?
What I would say to parents, I would say be an example. Don't say do as I say, but let them see you do what you're telling them to do. Be an example, positive example, because that goes a long way.
Yes.
Kids will want, when they see you doing certain things, they are most likely they're gonna follow because you are an example.
Yes.
So if you're gonna be an example, be a positive example.
Yes. We have intelligent youth these days, and they feel like if it is the right thing to do, then why aren't you doing it?
Exactly.
You know, and a lot of times if they don't understand the mistakes that we have made because we have not shared that with them, then they don't understand why you did certain things then, and now you're saying something different now. They think it's because, oh, you don't want us to have a good time like you had a good time, you know. And so we have to also be transparent to an extent as well when they're old enough to understand certain things, because we don't want to seem hypocritical, you know. Like you said, the old saying, do as I say and not as I do. You know, that's not going to work with this generation. It didn't work with my generation. You know, and that was one of the issues that I had, is the lack of respect. Now, you have gotten through high school. You've gotten through all of those formative years. How did you meet your husband?
Okay. Before I tell you that, I must say that I've dated 3 guys before, long before my husband came along.
Okay.
And all 3 guys that I dated, they've either come back or called me and say, you know what, you are different than any young lady I've ever dated. Remain the way you are.
Wow.
So that lets me know that something
You're doing
was
something
going
right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And even though that they tried to sleep with you?
You know, I had one guy to tell, you know, to mention that to me, but like I said, I had made up in my mind, you know what, it's not worth it.
Just one. And
Yes.
so therefore, they respected your position from the
Exactly.
very beginning.
Exactly. Because actually what I did, I try to be upfront with young guys, you know, the guys that I dated, you know, I would let them know, you know, if your plan, if marriage is not in your view, well, you know,
I'm not the
I'm
person
not the
to
right
date.
one for you.
Yes.
If marriage is not in your view, I'm not the right one for you.
And that's a very good way to put it as well, because a lot of times women and men, young and older, are afraid to say what they really want.
Yes.
You know, and that's why they wind up not getting what they really want. If you don't say that you want a commitment, you won't get a commitment.
With my husband, well, I was just minding my own business. I was busy.
Like you had been
like I
all
had
your
been.
life. Yes.
Working at a hospital, registering patients, and about 8 o'clock at night, he comes to my window and asks me, you know, was I married? And he, you know, asking a lot of questions. By that time, I'm asking, like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
So he gives me his home number, his cell number. I'm the type of young lady, I wouldn't call, you know, guys that quick.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked for my number, and I started to not give him my number, but the Spirit of the Lord said, don't turn me away. I wrote down my first name and my home number. And I guess by the time I got home, I guess he had called about 3 times. I guess to see if I was really who I said I was, because it was May 19th when we met in my name.
And so your name was May.
So I guess he was trying to, you know, to see if I was who I said I was. But anyway, every day he would call me, and I would call him back. He'd call me, and I'd call him back. I'm like, this guy, you know, he's very serious. You know, he would tell me he's going to do something, and I'm like, just going to see if he's going to do what he, you know, said he's going to do. And, you know, a lot of times, there's some guys, sometimes they would, you know, ask women for money and stuff, you know, if they're going to purchase something. And he went to get his first car, and I'm going to see if he's going to be okay, you know, what's going to go with this. And he didn't ask me for any money, had his down payment.
Wow.
And I'm like, this guy is really serious. He's really serious about what he wants, you know. So we dated for...
So you dated?
We dated for a year, and we had these little, agreements set up about, you know, we're gonna remain pure, you know, until we get married. We
So you
signed the
talked
agreement.
about that.
Yes,
and
we did.
So he was also keeping himself.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And that's important as well.
Exactly.
He had his standards.
Mm-hmm. So we made the little agreement, and in July of 2003, that's when we got married.
So you dated for
We dated for a year. We
year.
met in 2002 and got married in 2003.
Okay.
We had been dating for 2 months, and he proposed on July 12th of 2001. We met July. We met May 19th,
Right.
2002. Excuse me. He proposed June the 12th, 2002, and we got married July 19th, 2003.
Wow. What would you say to women who are waiting to get married, or I don't know, let the Lord lead you?
I would tell them, don't lose hope. You know, trust God and wait on Him. Get busy and be hidden so you can be found.
Wow. Wow. That's great. That is awesome. Just wait, get busy, be hidden so you can be found. And that's something that I would say to some of my friends that would always ask me, the question always was, would you ever get married again? Would you ever get married again? And I would say yes. And I just, at the time, I couldn't really imagine it, but I would just say yes because I just felt like I wasn't going to let the devil rob me of having a happy and healthy marriage because I was divorced. And I would say that, and I would tell them that the right man, when he came along, he would know what to say, because my friends would tease me like, I don't know how a man can approach you because you just, you know, unapproachable. And I said, well, he will know the right thing to say. And that's exactly what happened. My husband had a relationship with God, and through that relationship with God, God gave him what to say to me. Just like with May, when you said that you usually didn't give your number out, and the Holy Spirit spoke to you and said, this time it's okay. And I know, just based upon my experience, I was a born-again virgin. It was just a wonderful experience because when Virgil and I got married, you know, we two had kept ourselves until marriage, and it was just the most beautiful thing that we could have experienced. And there's just nothing like it. It's just nothing like accepting each other for the very first time after you have made a commitment. There's no concern as to what's going to happen with this relationship. You know that this is your life partner. And so you're just very open and free, and there's no inhibitions there. And you know, it was something that we really had looked forward to. I don't know if you all did, but we used to talk about that honeymoon, you know, what was going to happen, you know, how we both were kind of nervous. And, you know, it was just funny because I've been married before, and so is he. And so it was just kind of funny when we talked about it because, you know, when I would say, you know, I'm kind of nervous about it, and he was like, well, me too. And I'm like, well, and it just seemed really awkward, but it was such a beautiful experience that we wanted everyone to have that experience. And May coming from a perspective of a first time, and me coming from a perspective of not a first time, but starting over again, that anyone could do this. It's just a matter of making a choice, deciding that your yesterday is not going to be the same as your tomorrow. Every day does matter. And we thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Comments on self-love and self-responsibility from physician and life coach, Dr. Anno Obat.
Hello, today we're going to be dealing with the topic of self-love and self-responsibility. Self-love and self-responsibility. So, you know, this is a question I get posed, and I also pose to my clients. What is it to love yourself? In other words, do you love yourself? Take a moment and check inside and just think about that. And if you love yourself, how do you love yourself? So today we're going to delve into the topic of self-love and how to access that in self-responsibility. So what exactly is self-love? Simply loving yourself. What is self-responsibility? It's the ability to be able to respond to yourself, to be able to be responsible for yourself, for the decisions that you make, for the choices that you make in your life. There's nobody else to blame. So that's self-responsibility. And I usually like to tie that up into a nice little package, and I call it learning to love your humanity. Because let's face it, a lot of times, the reason why we may not feel totally in love with ourselves is because we have that negative self-image about ourselves, about what's wrong. So I assert that when I asked you whether you loved yourself, that just perhaps one of the things that came up was the things you don't love about yourself. Did that happen? If so, you're totally fine, you're totally okay. Because it's that negative self-talk that shows up and interferes with our ability to truly love ourselves. And by learning to love our humanity, and that's embracing all that we are, our good parts, our bad parts, our not so great parts, that really gives us access to self-love. Now, why is self-love very important? Now, first of all, a lack of self-love is what tends to give rise to a number of issues that I see as a physician and also as a coach. So a lack of self-love may show up, for instance, in a lack of relationships. Recently, I believe CNN had a spot where they claimed that 42% of African American women have never been married, never been in a relationship that leads to marriage. How striking is that? So a lack of self-love may actually tie into a lack of relationships, or if you are in a relationship, a lack of a fulfilling relationship. Because let's face it, not all relationships that we're involved in may be fulfilling. And that's not only just, a relationship between a man and a woman, but also your relationship with your family members, your co-workers. Those relationships may not be fulfilling if you have a lack of self-love. Another way that a lack of self-love shows up is in body distortion, a distorted image of who you believe yourself to be. Now, I don't know whether you've ever come across, a very striking looking, person. She has a great figure, and when you compliment her on how great she looks, she points to that one thing that isn't great looking on her, like that little piece of cellulite on her thigh, and you just look in horror, like, seriously? She seems to have a perfect body image, but she has a distorted image of herself. And that is directly linked to a lack of self-love. Also, issues related to obesity and being overweight are also tied in to a lack of self-love, because I can assert to you that inasmuch as we may have a reason why this occurs on, a physiological level, if you're not taking good care of yourself, then it's tied into a distorted body image and also a lack of self-love, and eventually manifests in certain chronic diseases. A lack of self-love may also show up in emotional disorders. And it may not necessarily be something tied up nicely into depression or bipolar, but just simply the way you are able to cope emotionally. How do you react, and what do those reactions bring about in your life? That may be related to your lack of self-love. Self-love could also show up in emotional disorders, and it doesn't necessarily have to be emotional disorders that require a psychiatric diagnosis like depression or bipolar or schizophrenia, but just simply your ability to cope emotionally with what's going on in life may be a manifestation of your lack of self-love, and could also actually segue into depression or other psychiatric illnesses. Another sign of a lack of self-love could be unhealthy habits such as drug use, alcohol use, unhealthy eating, unhealthy drinking. Those could all be manifestations of unhealthy or lack of self-love. And then let's go into another intricate topic like self-mutilation. You hear about teenagers cutting. That is a prime example of lack of self-love. And when you speak to these teenagers and drill down, they don't like themselves, they don't love themselves, and they say that very openly. But you know, a more subtle manifestation of lack of self-mutilation maybe things like excessive tattooing, for instance. I can't tell you, I mean, you see some people with tattoos over every aspect of their body, and you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're hiding? What is it that you're covering up, that you need to have every aspect of your body tattooed? Or body piercings that become very exotic. What is it that you're piercing? What pain are you hiding? So those are some examples of lack of self-love. And then you even have where you find very successful people. We spoke about it in our happiness segment, where they seem to be very successful, they're on top of their game, and yet it's not truly fulfilling. There's this void, there's this gaping wound.
You see, you can draw so much from May's testimony. I like especially how she said that as women we should be hidden so that we can be found. And what she was saying is be busy learning who you are, learning about yourself and your desires and your needs. And that way you can be confident when you meet someone in sharing what it is that you want. Another point I like that she made along with that is that she always up front when she met someone let them know what she had expected from the relationship. That's so important, because otherwise if you allow a person to relate to you without knowing what it is that you expect from the relationship, it's likely that you won't get it. And once they find out that perhaps that you want to be married and that's not what their desire is, then you may have consumed a lot of your time and energy with that relationship and it had no potential. So I thought those 2 points were very, very important that she shared with us. I hope that this has been a blessing to you, and if you have any questions and any comments, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or email us at everydaymatterstv@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us.